Borak Thung athletes, it wouldn't be summer without a 2000 AD Sci-Fi Special. And on this episode of the 2000 AD Thrillcast, we talk to two of the creators behind one of the mega crossover stories, Al Ewing and Boo Cook. And then we take a deep dive into the Red Seas. Well, welcome to the latest episode of the 2000 AD Thrillcast Earthlit. I am your host, as always, Mulchar. And on this episode, we're talking about the 2000 AD Sci-Fi Special, which is out now from all good newsagents and comic book stores, as well as digitally from the 2000 AD web shop and app, and also is winging its way across the Atlantic to be available from comic book stores in North America. Now, this is a fantastic collection of standalone stories which mash up 2000 AD classics. So you've got Judge Dredd and Johnny Alpha from Strontium Dog. You've got Sinister Dexter as Robo Hunters. You've got Strontium Dog mixed with Rogue Trooper. And you've got Stickleback and Red Steez, a nice kind of Ian Edgington verse story there. And you have the Harlem Zombies, which is, well, is it Harlem Zombos, rather, oh dear. Which is a mashing together of Zombo and Harlem Heroes. So one of the more popular modern classics and one of the all-time tacked-on Stone Cold classics from the dawn of 2000 AD. And on this episode, I was really pleased to be able to chat to two great friends of mine, Boo Cook and Al Ewing, about their bringing together of these two ages of 2000 AD into a single story. What it's like to do something like this, how fun it is, and also one or two tidbits about hopefully, maybe, perhaps, fingers crossed, a return from not just Zombo but also Al Ewing to the pages of 2000 AD. So yeah, we'll talk to them in a second. Also on this episode, my colleague Steve talked to critic Tiffany Babb about the Red Seas, which is one of the series that crosses over in this sci-fi special, which is Ian Edgington and Steve Yole's kind of mythical swashbuckling pirate adventure from a few years ago. So fascinating deep dive into one of the modern classics of 2000 AD. So yeah, looking forward to hearing that. We've got tons of stuff coming out over the next little while. I mean, not just the sci-fi special, but we've also got Misty, the Misty special with Gail Simone coming up. We've got the Steve Dillon Apex edition. And also, I'm going to move away from my camera for a second. We have this beast, which is Slain the Horn Guard, the anniversary edition, which Pat Mills and Simon Bisley's epic as you've never seen it before. Now, if you haven't pre-ordered this, then I very much recommend that you do so, because otherwise it will sell out and you will be disappointed. So this is just one of the, I mean, look at the, I mean, this is boring for the people who are listening to this rather than watching it on YouTube, but beautiful kind of gilt cover there. Huge collection in terms of its dimensions. And it's scanned from the original film, from our archive, rather than being scanned from comics. It's scanned from the original archive. So you basically get to see it in a way that it's never really been seen before. As far as I can tell, no previous volume, no previous reprint of this has ever kind of matched the detail. You can, in what you used to kind of see as just like block color, perhaps, you can see Bisley's individual brushstrokes. It's absolutely stunning, and the slipcase is well worth it. So that is coming out in July. We shall have copies of this along with the Rogue Trooper Blighty Valley Convention exclusive at San Diego, which is coming up in a couple of weeks. So we're about to be disassembled and flown across and then reassembled on North American shores for the, and I'm doing air quotes here for people who are listening, greatest show in the world. We've got Sam Bisley as our guest of honor. We've got signings with Gail Simone. We've also got a fantastic panel with Simon Bisley and Kevin Eastman of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles fame. So hopefully we'll be able to bring some of that action to listeners and viewers of the 2080 Thrillcast. But I have prattled on for long enough now. Let's get on with the interview. So it was wonderful to be able to chat to Al Ewing and Boo Cook about Harlem Zombos in the 2000 AD Sci-Fi Special. So it's wonderful to welcome you both onto the podcast because you've got a story in the Sci-Fi Special, which is Harlem Zombos in the kind of crushing together of all these different 2000 AD properties. I wanted to start off by talking to you, Al, because it has been a while since we've seen your name in 2000 AD.
Yeah,
It's always a
about a
joy.
year, 2 years.
And I just why this one? I mean, obviously, it's a short story you can fit around your other work, but why this story? What brought you back to the House of Tharg?
I mean, Thug asked. It's basically, I mean, recently I kind of came out of my exclusive with Marvel, and there was always a little hole in that for 2000 AD, but now I can write as much of anything for anybody as I want, so that's good. Um, so there's that. I mean, previous to this, I think. Thug has been sort of after me to write for various specials. I mean, starting off with the 40th anniversary one, which is like 44 years ago now, I think. I want to say
7 years ago now.
7 years ago. So half of Boo's wedding. So yeah, 7 years ago. God, was that can't be. God. Anyway, that was and then at some midpoint between then and now, I did another Zombo story, which was Zombo meets Judge Dredd.
Mm.
And this is basically the third one of those. So basically, like Thug was, have you thought about mashing Zombo and the Harlem Heroes together? And I had not, but I looked into it and it could be done. So I went and did it. But I feel like from here on, there's definitely room for me to return to the prog in more of a capacity. Though when that'll be, I couldn't say because I am snowed under.
I mean, of all the properties to cross Zombo over with, Harlem Heroes is an interesting one. Was it immediately obvious to you what to do with it?
No, not at all. I guess I had to go back and have a look at that original Harlem Heroes story to kind of see what it was doing because like I remember a few things like obviously I remember the first episode very strongly because it's been reprinted a lot and I remember parts of Inferno um but basically I read through the whole thing to see of one of Rebellion's reprints um and yeah it turns out there are connections in the first episode of the Harlem Heroes half of the Harlem Heroes are killed. So obviously those halves can then be turned into zombies to create half human, half zombie hybrids. And yeah, and in terms of like the rest of it, like all of these future sports stories, they share certain similarities. They share certain kind of commonalities, which you can have if you turn that up a little bit, then you've got a fun little comedy story.
Because looking back on your career, particularly when you're doing comedy, um, the tone of your stuff uh, always feels to me like you are riffing off those early days of 2000 AD. You know that kind of slightly overblown, hyperbolic kind of way of doing comics.
I'm a huge fan of that voice. I'll take any excuse to riff in that voice. The old kind of like Stanley, the sort of Pat Mills. I don't think Pat would thank me for comparing him to Stanley, but that kind of like bombastic sort of knowing how far to push it to really appeal. I feel like Stanley's version was very sort of tongue in cheek, whereas 2000 AD's version was always kind of more punk in that it was like it wasn't really interested in like poking fun at itself. It was more like we're just gonna go way over the top with everything to like get the thrill parity of AIDS. And yeah, Harlem Heroes, you do you do pick up. And as late as when I started reading 2000, which was something like 8 years in, 7 or 8 years in. Um, yeah, they were still doing that thing where you sort of it's almost like a joke and a punchline. You have the beat and then you come with a violent action beat with like the rest of the sentence. So it's really fun to kind of do that. It's like a kind of poetry. It's got cadence, it's got rules. Um, and it's always so much fun writing in that style. Um, I did a Thor issue recently that was very much, oh, good, I get to write in the Stan style. And a couple of people were really upset with me because they were like, oh, he's taking the piss out of the old comics. It's like, no, I love them. I
Mm.
love them. I love them too much. Um, I love to pastiche them. I take it very seriously. It's very deadpan.
And
So yeah.
I mean, from the very start, Zombo was one of those strips where you're just constantly talking in that voice. And what really struck me, and again, we're avoiding spoilers as much as possible on the Zombo, the Harlem Zombos, but that kind of sudden left turn of all of a sudden, uh, a meteor strikes, or this happens, or somebody gets swallowed by something, or it very much feels like that's
Yeah.
part and parcel of the Zombo voice.
I mean, pretty much, yeah. It's like there's a sort of absurdist kind of there's an absurdist quality to it, which is very much in the spirit of the kind of the thrill power of old, the sort of anything can happen. Um, and especially with this, because this has to kind of hark back to when that was how stories were told, when you had like 5 pages, and by God, something would explode during those 5 pages. Uh, and in the case of the Harlem Heroes, somebody would be horrifically injured. Uh, so yeah, that's always been great, always been fantastic.
Bill, I want to come to you next because, like Al said, it doing comics in this in kind of a way to evoke the thrill power of old. It's kind of it's not necessarily poking fun at it. It's just an ethos. It's just a way of constantly being kind of balls to the wall, kind of take it as far as you can. Um, did you kind of consciously try to mimic the kind of old Harlem Heroes, the style that Dave Gibbons and various other artists had?
I thought about it for about 30 seconds and and trying to follow in the footsteps of Dave and Henry, two of probably the finest comic artists to have ever lived. I thought I'm not going to try and emulate them. I'm just going to do my thing, as well as I can and hope for the best. But I don't know. I've had the chance to visit a lot of AD classic characters, with the spine artwork, and I really like just trying to capture the vibe of them, not necessarily the art style, but just their kind of attitude and the way they move and act and stuff. So yeah, it was really good fun trying to do that.
I mean, that's a, quite a good point. Like you say, you've been doing the Ultimate Collection spine artwork that just kind of keeps expanding outwards to the side. Um, I from an artistic point of view, is that a kind of a dream or a curse where you've got so many characters, all with very unique interpretations by their co-creators or somebody who's got a big body of work on that character, and you've got to do them all in a kind of coherent image that never ends.
I don't. Well, it's definitely a dream because I love them all so much, and but some of the artwork was like about 6 feet long and took weeks and weeks to pencil. So it's just sort of a dream curse or something, But yeah, really good fun. And so I sort of looked at the Harlem Zombos thing as being a bit of an extension of that, really, vibe-wise.
Because the other thing is that sports comics, which I mean, they are out there, but bearing in mind, like one of the biggest comics in Britain used to be Roy the Rovers, and they used to be multiple titles for mostly on football, but also on other sports as well. And then in that kind of classic first golden age, you had lots of kind of futures, Death Game 1999 in action and the Harlem Heroes and things like that. It's really fallen out of favor. Is that an artistic thing? Is it difficult to constantly be rendering that kind of action?
I've got a feeling it's because sports has no narrative, really. And so once you've had, an earthquake on the football pitch, in Roy the Rovers, where do you go from that, really? I don't know. Al's managed to do it, though, I think, in
I mean, yeah, I think the difference is like I was taking cues from future sports. I think with Roy the Rovers, poor old Roy, he's the rules of football don't change. I mean, now we might get like a gripping, VAR story. What's the one where they video it? Or like,
VAR. Yeah.
if there's some sort of tweak to the offside rule that could keep Roy the Rovers in business for weeks. But like generally the football is sort of secondary to the soap. Um, and every game of football in Roy the Rovers is a way to sort of express the personalities of Roy and everybody else around him. So it's like, I don't know, Vic Guthrie's got a problem. Oh no, he's missed a crucial goal. But Roy the Rovers can't say something like, oh right, well I'm now going to dribble the ball over to like the secret score tank, which rises out of the ground and tries to shoot me. It's like it's less exciting because it is based in the real world. So you've got to kind of go to these Dallas length extremes. You got to shoot Roy and have like everybody die in a bus crash. And the earthquake, was that real?
That was real, I think.
That
Yeah,
actually happened to Roy. Okay, well there we go.
pretty
That proves
sure.
everything.
I mean, don't forget, he also had foot, his left foot amputated.
I mean, that
And
was the true sign that they run out of everything that they could possibly do
I
to
mean,
Roy.
I bet it didn't stop him, though.
going from the 60s through to the 90s. I mean, fair play to them. Fair play. That's I think Barry
I mean,
Thompson talks a fair bit about this. Just how to keep a weekly comic strip going.
the 90s was the time of the legacy hero, though, because they were trying to trot out Roy's kid as the new Roy.
Yeah.
Um, but like, yeah, no, it didn't take. People had got too used to Roy's hair. They weren't having the curtains of the
It
new Roy.
wasn't as good as Hotshot Hamish's hair. He had the classic.
I mean, that was the best.
Yeah.
At
Yeah.
one point, they had the Kemp brothers. Martin
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Gary Kemp. I want to say.
I
Uh,
mean, I would.
yeah.
I don't know why Gareth Southgate hasn't signed them today. They could have. I have no idea how England is doing, but I assume they'd be doing a lot better if Spandau Ballet were behind the ball, putting it in the net.
I mean, I think if this conversation is proving anything, it's just proving. Well, it's reinforcing the kind of nerd sport divide that exists in comics. I have no idea how England are doing
I
either.
mean, maybe
Um,
maybe there didn't used to be such a nerd. Maybe that's another reason sports stories have fallen out of favor because the nerd sport divide has really, or rather, the kind of nerd nerds and comic writers have sort of come together, whereas it used to be like a job that was one you would do, and now
I
it's
think
like the dream job of a whole
because
nerd cast.
the who was the regular? I'm probably getting this wrong. I'm going to get screamed at. Like Tom Tully, I think,
Yeah, it's done a bunch
was
of
a
these.
regular on Roy, but then he's also doing like the ultra violence stuff for Action and bit of
Well, I mean,
2000
like
AD and everything.
Mean Arena was Tully, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Because that was, I mean, that kind of gets at something I was inching towards, which was like, if you want to do a future sport, you've got to make up a sport.
Yeah.
And it's always based on like a thing kids know already, but
Mm.
like amped up. Like airball is like it's basketball, it's American football. It's like mostly basketball. They're always dribbling the ball. It's basketball with jetpacks, and I don't know what a British person's idea of like what American football is, i.e., an exciting sport, as opposed
And
to the
I am
boring.
going to get screamed at for this. I find American football boring to the point of tears. Um,
I wouldn't know. I haven't even watched a single
exactly,
second of it.
Yeah, I mean,
I
me
was
neither.
I was once in America for Thanksgiving, and I picked up the most awful cold, and I was sat on a sofa in Delaware of all places, kind of fading in and out of consciousness. I was just so ill, and I thought I thought American football was like 90 minutes. So I thought I was going like insane because every time I opened my eyes, the same game was on TV. I thought today is just like it's never ending, but apparently it just goes and goes and goes and goes and goes.
How long? How long is it?
I think it's as long as it lasts, isn't it?
Oh Christ!
It stops and starts all the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It
Oh
stops. You
God.
have an advert break, and then it starts again. We are going to get really screamed at.
Oh, I don't care.
But anyway,
only just
anyway,
only just got into wrestling. That's
I think
another thing.
where's 2000 AD's wrestling comic?
I mean, I don't know. They should have it. I guess it's too thrill pad for the rest of them.
GBH, he would be good.
Yeah, GBH would be good. But no, that's where we get our future dead sport from in Harlem Zombos. We take a bunch of popular sports and also skee ball, and we squish them together when we wrap them up. And that's how it's done. That's how street football came
Did
to
I
be.
also, and without spoilers, see a pastiche of a certain unpleasant wizard writer sports game in there as well, or am I imagining that?
I mean, I guess I hadn't actually put it together until now, but
Like I can't explain my thinking without actually spoiling the
yeah,
story.
without
Yeah,
spoiling the thing.
I don't recall consciously putting that in, but I
Mm,
have no memory. So
I mean, I think I get what you're saying. I get what you mean. But I think it was more because obviously I don't like to think about her at all, and I resent that I'm forced to. But I think really what I wanted to happen was to like cram an entire championship of this fictional sport into a single episode that's 6 pages long and still have room for like the big denouements. So yeah, I did lean on an old comedy trope, which once people read the strip, they will go, oh yeah, that old chestnut brought out again, like the Christmas nuts to feast on.
But
Um
Boo, the artist who took over from Dave Gibbons on Harlem Heroes was Massimo Ballardinelli, and then of course he then worked on Inferno, which was the kind of sequel. Um, I can't think of an artist that your style is probably closer to in 2000 AD terms than Massimo. Am I wrong there?
it's your mind. I don't know. He's not someone who I've consciously tried to emulate, and I've consciously tried to emulate plenty. But I think he probably just is naturally part of my DNA, and he does, or he did do a lot of psychedelic strips, which that's where I kind of lean
Thought
toward.
you drew a really, really good Ace Scott once,
Mm.
and that stuck in my head.
Yeah, he's great fun to draw, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Because I always thought it was such an odd choice on a sports strip, somebody like Bellardinelli, who is fantastic and, as Pat says, phantasmagorical, and you look at his other work and his Ace Trucking, it's The Dead with Peter Milligan and things like that. But also he's on this sports kind of future sports strip.
Well, maybe that sort of came before all the crazy psychedelic stuff. He sort of maybe was a bit more of a jobber back then, and then
Having
expanded.
having read through it all recently, there is Dave Gibbons leaves, and the next week, all of like the costumes everybody's wearing get like 50% more wild. Like suddenly the Harlem Heroes are fighting these like Teutonic knights, and like you can kind of picture how like Dave Gibbons would have done it, but like Massimo Blagnelli just turns them in, and then like they finish out Harlem Heroes, and then Inferno comes along, and suddenly everything's like shaped like an acid trip, and like there's a giant caveman and a weird monkey guy, and like everybody's holding these giant bats that are just shaped like a knickknack. And it's just the psychedelia, the sort of Euro psychedelia has kind of ramped up another 200%.
Yeah.
And um, when somebody's like revealed as a cyborg, like all of the wires just pop out of them in like just this glorious mess. It's just incredibly kind of just wild stuff, just beautiful and very, very violent because all of these strips, I didn't realize Harlem Heroes ended this way as well. All of these strips end with the entire team getting massacred. Like literally three people are left at the end of Harlem Heroes. And like at the end of like Inferno, it's literally just Giant. And I'm pretty sure he only survived because so he could spawn. So he could spawn an already existing psychic.
Well, it's the Shakespearean ending. It's Hamlet. It's how you bring a treatise about human experience to an end. You just have everybody murder each other.
Yeah,
But like
I think there's maybe I don't know. Me and Tom with Blunt, we decided to kill everyone in that, and it sort of feels quite good, just destroying all your characters that you've spent years working on. It's quite satisfying. I don't know. So maybe
yeah,
they were
you're not
just
really allowed to do it in the States. They won't let you. They don't like it. They don't like it when you kill Spider-Man.
kill all the Avengers, Al.
Yeah, yeah, they should do it. Yeah, just end an Avengers issue like, yeah, kill them
Leave one of them as a brain in a sort of cylinder.
all.
But
Yeah.
one thing I did want to ask you about, Boo, is the nemesis of all artists when doing sports strips, which is crowds.
Yeah.
Now, various different artists have various different strategies for dealing with the fact that there has to be an audience to this stuff. You kind of can't set matches in COVID times where it's like played behind closed doors and everything. What was your solution to the fact that there needs to be 30,000 people watching this?
Coloured blobs. You have your foreground characters, and then the ones next to them are a bit less rendered, and then next to them hardly any rendering, and then the rest is just blobs. And then once you've done that a few times, it's only blobs. That's it. Because otherwise, I mean, I think no one's looking at the crowd anyway. You just need to suggest that they're there once that they're established. So yeah, just blob it up.
It's so interesting, having looked at some of the old Roy the Rover stuff, how quite often it does get to the point, certainly in the later years, where Roy and the other players are just playing in a vast white expanse of nothingness. And like there'll be a crowd at the beginning, but then all the action shots are just happen in like purgatory or somewhere.
Well, in the old Dave Gibbons stuff, I was quite worried to see that all the crowds were like, properly rendered, like tiny little faces with expressions and that. And I was like, oh, maybe on page one.
But that was when Dave was young, you know? That's how we ended up with Watchmen, with like 4 layers of action in every panel.
Yeah.
Crowd in sports stories, the crowd they're quite talkative, aren't they? You're always getting little speech bubbles leading to them that say things like, "Oh, that penalty's going to be difficult for Vic Guthrie." Yes, but look, he's got an assist from Blackie Gray, and it's like, wow, what good eyes he got. Some loud voices from the crowd there.
No, it's good.
But,
Plenty of that in Harlem Zombos too. It's a real
yeah.
nice little touch on the first page where the top panel they say, "And here they come in their classic Z formation," and that sort of leads you into the next one. Nice.
Yeah, no, you're right. I did do that.
There's a lot of it. It's good.
Yeah. It's all based on the old Harlem Heroes strips, which in turn, using all the conventions of football stories.
I mean, to be fair, I in my life I've attended one professional football game, and there was a guy who basically behind us who basically described what was happening in front of us.
Probably quite useful.
I mean, it was before I started wearing glasses, so they were just a load of like we were up at the back. It was a load of blobs running around. So yeah, I can imagine crowds just kind of being a handy exposition trick for any sports comic.
Yeah,
crowds and
speed the narrative along a bit in a nice, clear fashion. Because, like, I was stroking my chin a bit, trying to process the Harlem Zombo script. Right, so that becomes that, and now this is happening to that, and and the crowd just sort of, keep you floating along nicely. It's good.
Yeah, see, in my head, it was all just happening in one of Roy's nebulous fights. So, like, you could do things by have one of the characters suddenly be wearing cricket pads.
Yeah, that was nice. I mean, I want to go into more detail about it, but it would involve spoilers. So
Yeah, we'd have to name all of the sports that make up Scarable.
But I mean, this is the interesting thing. I was reading a thing about Mad Max Fury Road, and I can't remember which director was saying like he watched Mad Max and he thought it was insane because there's so much going on, but you are always aware of, as a viewer, of where you are, of where everything is. Like at no point do you ever feel confused about where the different vehicles are and where your viewpoint is. And I guess in a very short comic strip around a reinvented sport with multiple elements all going along at the same time, as an artist, making sure there's a kind of a narrative landscape, so it's not just flick to lots of unconnected images. Is that something you were conscious of? I think you kind of applied that.
It actually is, yeah. And if there was any kind of long shots a few pages in, I would try and put some of the things that previously appeared just in the background, just to let you know that it was all sort of still happening in that same little arena kind of thing. So yeah, there's a bit of that going on. Yeah, it's a lot to fit into one stage.
I was not very helpful with that, given the amount of things that just pop up out of nowhere.
It's all right. I think we got there. We got there.
Yeah, no, it's good stuff.
I mean, having had Judge Dredd versus Zombo, and now the Harlem Zombos, is there space for like a proper return of Zombo to 2000 AD?
Yeah, I mean, I've pretty much run out of
If only.
bash at
If
like
only.
I don't know. I don't know who else. I mean, it's because it's who's left. It's there's Dandare, there's Bill Savage. Who haven't we? I mean, Jethro wasn't in Frog One even, so there's a third one that I'm not remembering. Oh, Flesh.
A Mac one.
We did Mac one.
Oh,
He was our 40th. He was the one we had a bracket in the 40th. Zon Zero was was that. That was wonderful fun. Yeah, that's really it's see, there's a thing that I'm in real danger of doing what we have been trying not to do this whole time, spoiling the strip. But like, yeah, so I better not say anything more, but yeah, there's definitely some similarities in these recent zombie strips.
well, in the spirit of this sci-fi special, which is all about the great mashups between different strips. If you had a choice of any two 2000 AD properties that you would absolutely love to mash up into a single story, what would it be?
I feel like it's got to be like two completely disparate ones.
Yeah, like Strontium Dog and Robendonk or something
Yeah,
completely incompatible, I think.
I'm man, I'm trying to think now of like where
Well, you're right on the spot here, aren't I?
Yeah, there's
yeah,
a
yeah, you put me right in the spot.
pantheon of stuff
Um,
to draw from.
I mean, are there any classic ones that haven't been touched in the special? Because I know Rogue Trooper and Strontium Dog.
Mm.
Strontium Dog's got two, I think. Um,
Nemesis is crying out for a mashup with something. I don't know what.
it should be. I want to mess something up with Haphazard. Um, but I don't know. It's got to be something completely bonkers.
Yeah.
Um,
What about you, Boo?
Yeah, I don't know. Nemesis and Sooner or Later or something. Something spiky mixed with something dreamy. I don't know.
I think it should be Hugan's haircut and Mean Team, so we can give Blackjack Keller that haircut. See what he does with it. The mean haircut.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, really enjoyed the Harlem Zombos, and I hope it is the harbinger, the rotting corpse of a harbinger of more to come from everyone's favourite gentleman Zombo. So thank you very much, guys. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that, Earthlets. I certainly did. It's great to chat to Al and Boo after bloody ages. Yeah, pick up the 2000 AD Sci-Fi Special for some Harlem Zombos. Now, we're going to move on to our deep dive, which is we haven't done one of these in quite a while. They were kind of a staple when we went weekly with the podcast during the COVID lockdowns. And always a lot of fun digging up an old thrill and just exploring it with somebody who's potentially new to it, or somebody who's got the kind of long-standing opinions of it, but really kind of chewing away at what makes it work and why it's worthy of discussion. And thank you to my colleague Steve for reviving this, and for picking Tiffany Babb, who is a comics critic who's written for the AV Club, worked on Panel by Panel magazine, worked at Popverse as well, which fantastic work, and I think has written some stuff for our websites as well, if memory serves. Yeah, they dive into, appropriately enough, The Red Seas, which is the Ian Edgington, Steve Yoel kind of swashbuckling mythical pirates series from a few years ago. Digital collections are available in 2 volumes from the 2000 AD web shop and app, and are well worth your time, Earthlets. So I'm going to hand over to Steve and Tiffany to take a deep dive into The Red Seas.
All right, fine, Athletes. This is Steve Droid. I'm here with Tiffany Babb, who is a comics critic of note, who is joining me for the first in hopefully a series of, let's call them the 2000 AD Book Club series. We're going to be picking out random volumes from 2000 AD's past and present and talking about them in a little detail. The idea of the series is that I'm still fairly new, even though I'm a minted droid now with Farg. And when I first came to 2000 AD myself, there were several comics that people said, that's the one to start with, or this is the one to start with. And a lot of those are names I'd never even heard of before. And with this series, we want to try and grab onto some of those, see what they're like to start off with, if they're a great way into 2000 AD or not, and get a bit of understanding of some of the more obscure offerings from the galaxy's greatest comics over the decades. Tiffany, thank you for joining me on the show today. First of all, how are you and how are things?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm doing well. Sorry if there's noise because my dog is right under my desk and they are jackhammering something outside. They've been building this house for like 4 years and it still doesn't look like a house. So there may be noise, but I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to talk about comics.
Thank you. And if the dog makes an appearance, just we'll let you know. And anyone watching on YouTube, we'll point it out for you. We're going to talk about. Well, what are we going to talk about? What's the volume that you've semi-picked for this one?
I have semi-picked The Red Seas by Ian Edgington, Stephen Yoel, and we just practiced this and I've already forgotten. And then Annie Parkhouse. But the first volume is titled Under the Banner of King Death, which I think is a pretty fun title.
Yeah. Now this is the Pirate series, which debuted in 2000 AD, Prog 1313. That was way back in October 2002, which is long before I even started reading comics at all. I don't know about yourself, but this is
unless we're counting Archie and Calvin and Hobbes, yeah.
I wasn't even reading at that level at that point in time. I think I was still drawing stickmen, and that was about as far as it got for me, to be honest. Now with this series, we picked it for a particular reason, which is is it fair to say you're a pirate fan?
Yes, question mark. It's not like I'm like constantly reading books about pirates, but Steve, you know that I'm a big Black Sails fan. It is one of my all-time favorite television shows. I've been rewatching it since it came out on Netflix in the US. And yeah, I just like pirate vibes.
Does that extend to the series which is most close to the Red Seas, which is Pirates of the Caribbean?
I liked the first one. I think, and bits of some of the other ones. It's like, I guess when they were coming out, they were all quite exciting, but like whenever you watch them in hindsight, you remember like some of them are really awful. I haven't seen them in a bit though, so maybe they've gone around the other way and are great again. No.
No, I don't think so.
So like, it's funny because like I'm not even like, I don't like the concept of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland. Like I know they fixed things, like they've not had like obvious scary depictions of sexual assault and stuff, but like it's still weird to me. It just seems like a weird concept for like, if you're gonna do Pirates ride, make them fun. When you make them menacing, it feels like, well, first of all, like you're not being, they are menacing, but you're also not clearly being honest to the history of it, which was kind of terrifying. So it's almost whitewashing in a way. Whereas like in Pirates of the Caribbean, they are kind of, it is high genre, and you do kind of enter this like cowboys and sheriffs thing where you're not actually thinking about the reality of cowboys. But like the ride itself is kind of like, let's look at all this, like, let's look at these people burning a town down. This is like our form of entertainment. And you're just like, but they did burn towns down and it was bad. Like people died. So the concept of the ride has always like annoyed me in a lot of ways, but the movies, like the concept of the movies I like, and I feel like this book, these comics fall into the same realm of that, where it is high genre, and they're not necessarily trying to depict the reality of being a pirate, right? It's all about the action and the fun and the adventure.
Yeah, absolutely. Because this one, it starts off and you're not quite sure what you're going to get, because with 2000 AD, it can go dark, it can go light, it can go anywhere in the middle. But I think after 1 or 2 pages, you go straight into this big splash page of Captain Jack Dancer, our lead, on the Red Wench, his pirate ship, swinging across with all of his colleagues to pillage another ship, and you can tell immediately this is kind of like this is what the Pirates of the Caribbean was aspiring to. I think in all of the films, and the interesting thing is that, as far as I can tell, this predates Pirates of the Caribbean as a movie. No, the ride was obviously first, but like before any of that, this is what came out. And considering this goes into several ideas, like there are zombie pirates who show up at some points, there are lots of supernatural things going on. It's interesting to see how much of this has actually shown up in Hollywood, even the references, unintentional or not, which is quite fun. But yeah, it comes straight in, doesn't it, with this sort of big swashbuckling Errol Flynn style thing with Captain Jack, as we probably shouldn't call him, in the leading role. What were you expecting from the Red Seas before you read it? When you just looked at the cover, perhaps, or you just heard the general premise, what did you think this was going to be, and was it that?
That's a funny question. I feel like unless I've heard about a book a lot, I tend not to just like open it and start reading it. But like I can tell you what drew me in immediately was the art style, and it's very dense. It is very old fashioned. Like you say, it's early 2000s, but it feels like it's from like a while back, like decades before that, right? Just from the way the pages are laid out, how much text is there, how dense the images are. And like the art is incredible. It's beautiful. It's so interesting. Like it's so classically rendered in so many ways. And because there are so many interesting images and like interesting characters, we've got the dog head, like all of that. Just there's so much joy in the art itself. And the story is really great too. Like I really enjoyed reading it. But definitely what kind of got my interest in the first few pages and then in the comic itself was definitely the art.
Yeah, which is in black and white, which I think is absolutely the right choice for this.
Yeah.
It gives it a timeless feel for me. If it was colored by anyone in any sort of style, I think it would date the comic into whatever that particular style of, that particular time coloring would be. Have it be black and white gives it this feel, especially because this is a comic which goes off into some really unexpected directions. Like at one point, they are climbing into the the supernatural world of the pantheons of the gods. Like they go off in some places you wouldn't expect, and I think the black and white, it really helps with the comic being so dense from Steve Yoel's style. It really helps keep things clear and concise, and it feels as things get stranger and stranger, the black and white actually means that you feel, oh no, this is not as strange as it's coming across. It feels like this is for Jack and his team. This is another day at the office almost,
Right.
the high seas office. And as it continues on, I think one thing that really comes through for me is Steve Yoel's ability to tell an action scene. Not an easy thing to do, you've got to imagine. I know a lot of artists don't like drawing car chases, don't like drawing motorbikes or horses or any sort of like vehicle that's being used for this sort of thing. But the fight set at sea here and on decks with the hand-to-hand fighting stuff, it comes across so well for me. There's a chaos, but it feels really organized, and you can tell what's happening at any one point in time, even though it's a free-for-all.
I mean, in that way, I feel like it's also more old-fashioned. Like it does feel, I mean, this is the obvious dumb comparison, but like a serial comic strip, right? Where we have like pirates, and there is a lack of real estate that like we have nowadays with like a full comic book page, and it just, every panel is so dense in information, everything has to be ultra clear to get what's going on across immediately,
which comes from the format, because for 2000 AD these stories are being published 5 or 6 pages at a time at most every week, which again is kind of striking in this one, because sometimes you can see that serialization comes through really strongly in 2000 AD, but with this one I don't think it does so much. You can see a few of the cliffhangers and surprises and so on, but it feels like a continual piece to me reading this volume through again. And this volume has 3 stories in it, and all 3 of them don't feel like they've got breaks. Like these could have been published as the full American style 22 pages or so at a time, and I've gone, oh yeah, it feels like that. And let's have a quick look at those stories if we can. And I'm looking down at my notes, so I'm unprofessional. The Under the Banner of King Death is the name of the volume. It's also the name of the first story, which introduces all the characters as they head off on a rescue mission. Essentially, is what happens in this one, to rescue Captain Jack's favored companion, who is the witch Isabella. I was interested in this one because Jack himself is the classic sort of pirating rogue with a heart of gold. How did he come across for you as you're reading the story? Was he someone who felt like a strong lead for you, or was he a bit unclear? Having watched Black Sails, you're perhaps used to the morally grey people. What was Jack like?
It was interesting because you're right, he is kind of this archetype, especially in the first story, and then in like the rest of the stories he's kind of, and I don't know whether I like it or not, like I have no strong feelings about it, but he kind of like becomes the unhim quite quickly. Like he's like, oh, the witch left me and now I am a slob and sad and drinking all the time. And like usually if you do see that happen in these stories, but like it only takes 5 minutes and they're back on their feet and off to the next adventure, but he's still like quite sad.
It takes him a long time.
Yes, which is just, it is funny because I think like in the traditional sense of this kind of story, they're just like, yeah, nobody wants to watch this, but we are kind of watching it here, and it is interesting, and it does set him apart a bit. I don't know how I feel about it, but it is like, it does add like a shade of character, right, to the story. He's not the same guy. I mean, that's the whole thing about a lot of these stories is at the end of the arc, the characters will all be reset as if nothing had happened. But he carries this trauma with him. He carries his experiences with him, which is also interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he starts off almost like a sort of Robin Hood type figure with his merry men behind him, and then the story reverses and he becomes the the person they're kind of carrying along. It gives a chance to see more of those characters, which is nice. I always struggle as a reader to keep up when there's a team of characters all introduced at once to work out who is who and which ones are which. So having Jack step back a little bit and have the other characters step forward really helped me to remember who's who and what they're all up to. Obviously, you just read the first volume, but were there any other characters who stood out for you in that way? Like when Jack stood away, the other characters, were they strong for you, or were they kind of the expected side characters and this sort of thing? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think most of them were the expected side characters. I think the character design like really comes into it with the distinguishing of the characters, and they're like, most of these characters have to be one note so you can tell them apart. But the character who really stood out to me was the tavern keeper.
Yes, Meryl, Mistress Meryl.
She's so great. Like even she's in the first volume, if I remember correctly, and it's just for like a little moment, and she's fun, and then she gets really a few moments to shine later on, and I really love the pairing of her and the dog head. Like it's just so sweet and unexpected and funny, and like still like treated very seriously, which is what you want out of this. I found that very charming.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to have a sense of a world, because in the first volume they start off at the tavern, the name of which I forget. I'm sure it's something slightly offensive because that's pirates for you. But then they head away from that, and she's left away, so you don't see her again. Then she comes back in the third story, which is called Meanwhile, where she's been left to dog sit. We should explain the dog. We should explain the dog a little bit.
Yes.
So at one point, Jack heads off into the Never world in a sense, and he meets a two-headed talking dog, slightly patronizing talking dog as well. He's got some refinements about him. He's probably English, and this dog probably gets its heads chopped off, which get put into a glass bubble, which are then carried around with them, and he becomes the ship's compass, to his dismay. By the third story arc, the talking two-headed beheaded dog in a glass bubble then gets left at the tavern. There we go. We've expositioned it.
Got the listeners up.
Yeah, the listeners are going, this is a strange story. But then the dog gets dog napped, which means Meryl and her team have to assemble and go on the rescue. For me, this is probably my favorite of the three stories in the first volume. I don't know if it's the same for yourself, but I really liked this leaning into the, I don't know, would you call it steampunk aesthetic, the clockwork aesthetic of the villain who's.
Well, you know what I was thinking about? I was thinking about Treasure Planet. Have you seen that movie, the animated movie?
I've only heard of it. Yeah,
it's great. I rewatched it recently, and I realized like so much of my aesthetic and narrative personality comes from that movie, which is really just Treasure Island, but like in space with like steampunk visuals and talking animals, and like the dog at a certain point gets a robot body. His glass bubble head is put on a dog robot body, and I was just like, this is just like Treasure Planet.
Well, I wonder which one influenced the other. It'd be interesting to see the timings on that one. It could go either way, knowing
I bet you Treasure Planet was like 2 years later.
The thing that it kind of reminded me of was Doctor Who, because most things are only Doctor Who. The episode with Madame de Pompadour, where
the clockwork people,
the porcelain faces. Again, that sort of mixing of the steampunk aesthetic with robotics, with the alien, with the unexpected. I mean, when you read the Red Seas, were you expecting it to be a series that went off into the supernatural, the future science, that sort of thing, or did you expect more of a straightforward historical?
No, I was expecting it. I think partially because many pirate stories, especially pirate comics, go into the supernatural. Like, it is normal for there to be a witch. There's normal for there to be skeleton pirates. Like, so much of that comes like I mean, everything comes from Treasure Island, right? Like our contemporary concept of what pirates are all comes from Treasure Island. And there's a lot of mysticism in that book, right? There's a lot of like, this is cursed. We are this
Here
and
are some
that.
prophecies. Here are some
Yes.
songs that have deeper meanings.
Yes, exactly. So like I think because that's in the text, you expect to see it everywhere, even in very grounded pirate stuff, even like Black Sails, which is quite grounded in like there's no one doing magic. There's always that sense of like, but is that guy magic? Is that guy like
Right,
possibly
yeah.
a god? We're not 100% sure. Or is it just kind of everyone's imaginations? And like we've been on a boat for a really long time.
Which is the complete opposite of the Red Seas, which within a few pages have already gone off into witches are real, Aladdin's out there with the jinn, just so you know. And he works in the same way that we expect. You free him, you get several wishes, and you can do what you want of him. And he's got a bracelet on, so he can't be released early. And then
well, you know
also they
what
go
that
to visit the
reminded me
gods.
of? Like once the magic started coming in, even before that, like I was thinking about One Piece a lot. Like this, like One Piece is also driving from the same like source material, but also like the same kind of boyish adventure energy. Like this is definitely a boyish book, right? It's not that like it's not very interesting for adults, but like, you know, the romance is not like an adult romance. It's what a boy thinks a romance is. It's a beautiful witch woman and she's got this kind of personality, and when they break up he's distraught, and like you don't really see their actual relationship happening. And like One Piece is really like that too, where it's all, I mean, there's not really romance in it, but it's all this like, it comes from boyish imagination, right? Which is also where Treasure Island comes from. But it's just this, like it, again, it's not grounded. It's not coming from history. It's coming from this idea of pirates and this idea of bad guys and like this idea of menace and like evil people who want to take over and blah, 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 blah. None of it is very connected to reality at all. Like the evil that we see in there is like is storybook evil, which like doesn't make it bad, right? I really enjoyed it. It's just, again, it's very high genre. It's a very specific style. The dog is groaning and I don't know why. I think he's just whining. But it's a very specific style, which I quite enjoy in pirate stories. I think all my genre stories. So, you know, I don't mind a grounded genre work from time to time, but like there's something fun about boyish imagination, right?
And he's got his faithful dog companion. He's got his best friends who are a bunch of like misfits who are all weird, different piratey types. And like I say, the people he goes up against, it's Dr. Orlando Doyle is the villain of the first storyline, who then becomes connected to the literal devil. And then following that, you've got porcelain monsters, you've got kraken, you've got harpies. It's very much sort of like a Ray Harryhausen type, 19 whatever it may have been, adventures. I didn't know my film history. I'm sure it's in the 1900s. That's as far as I can go. Skeleton warriors, I'm sure, will show up at some point, and there'll be lizards and dragons and dinosaurs and stuff. You can see it all coming out from here, I think, as Red Seas continues. The other thing I wanted to ask about with the Red Seas was focusing on that sort of genre element, because 2000 AD is perhaps considered to be the sci-fi comic, the future wars, the road troopers, the Judge Dredd's, that sort of thing. Getting something like the Red Seas, you'll read it as part of a 2000 AD, which has 4 or 5 different stories every week, so it's part of a different thing. I personally really like the idea of having strange, unexpected genres show up in these kind of anthologies to get some romance in there, get some horror, get some westerns and stuff like that. For yourself, have you read much in the way of pirate comics and so on? Is it mostly other media that you've read or watched?
I feel like I haven't read much from like front to end. I feel like I've come across like collections of strips, especially. They're kind of just out of fashion, right? When was the last time someone did a pirate comic? Although my old boss at Popverse, Chris, told me that he like saw in an interview once that Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips had put together a pirate comic pitch called Black Sails, I think.
Oh, really?
Which was just like, my brain was like melding together when I heard that. But like, when was like the last time someone did a big pirate comic? Like, I just can't remember. They're just not. You get your noir, you get your gangsters, you get like a lot of different genres. You get westerns like way more than you get pirate comics. Honestly, I think in America at least, the Pirate of the Caribbean thing just shot everything dead for a long time. Like, no one wanted pirate stories post Pirates of the Caribbean because it was just so saturated, and then the movies got so bad and people were just like done with pirates. Like, you don't even get pirate movies. Like, even there aren't even that many pirate TV shows, which seems wild because it should be like ripe for
such
the
a deep
making,
history
but
there. Or you can have the real life stuff, or you can have the fiction side of things. You can go so many different directions with it, and people don't. It's surprising. I mean,
it's time for a revival.
This is the era of pirates. This is what we need now, is the pirates to come back. And I should just quickly plug that in the 2000 AD Sci-Fi Special out in July, there will be a Red Seas and Stickleback crossover from Ian Edgington, which will see pirates come back to 2000 AD. So there's a quick plug that you just prompted me. So apologies, I have to get those in. We are quickly running out of time. I am being told by the overlords at Zoom. So what I wanted to ask was, when you read the Red Seas, you finished reading it, was it something that you enjoyed? Would it be something you would return to for future volumes, or was it kind of, I've read that, I enjoyed it, but that's me done?
It is something I would continue to read. I don't know if I would like, I mean, this is gonna pain you, but it is kind of hard to get 2080 comics here sometimes. So like, I don't think it's something that I would like hunt down in like a obscure comic book website try to get a copy. But like, if I saw copies, I would definitely read it. I like, it is the kind of thing that I like. Like, I am very much a fan of adventure stories in general. Again, this is probably because I loved Treasure Planet as a child. There's something so pure about them, and so like fun. Like, it's all about the joy of it, in the same way that, like, you know, when you watch kids movies, and I read a lot of children's literature in general, there's this sense of wonder and excitement that you just don't get in a lot of like literature made for adults. And I think this book has it, right? It's fun. Like, it wants to be fun, and it is fun, and it chooses like little things like, well, wouldn't it be cool if like this dog was like this? And then like, once we've got that settled, it's like, what if he had a robot body? And you're just like, that is cool. I just watched Furiosa last night, and like, that film has, I think George Miller has a lot of that sensibility. And Furiosa is obviously much more for adults, but like, he has this joy that everyone comments on, which is just like, wouldn't it be cool if this big explosion happened this way? Wouldn't it be cool if this guy looked really cool because he had this on his back? And it's like, that is cool, and we don't have enough of that, and I think we should have more of that.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Yeah, and even especially just within the microverse of 2000 AD, having more of these kind of stories it's always exciting when you get a 2000 AD issue come through, and it's got something in there that is just a heavy genre piece of some kind, you know, that is a western, or you know, is I don't know, ninjas or submarines or ghosts or something like that, you know, just something like that. And you can just delve into it, because like I say, it's a space that's not been pursued very much in comics. And you know, if you can find someone like Steve Yoel who can draw a pirate ship and is willing to do it for page to page on end, it seems like something that's, you know, there's a lot of uncharted water to sail across, you could say.
Oh,
I hated saying that.
That was terrible.
As I was saying it, I was upset with myself. But yeah, well, we can say that the Red Seas, we read volume 1. There are several volumes available through the 2000 AD web store if you should like to read it, and it's also available on the 2000 AD app. However, Tiffany, thank you so much for coming on to talk about it with me. Can I ask, where can we find you online and what are you up to?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. And you can find me online on my website, tiffanybabb.com, on Twitter /X @ExplodingArrow. I have a monthly newsletter that I send out, which is the best way to keep up with what I'm doing, which right now is just freelancing. So I'll have pieces coming up in the next few months. Yeah, just, writing about pop culture and stuff, writing about movies, writing about comics. It's an exciting time right now for me, but also just kind of like, I have nothing to plug at the moment.
More to come, though.
More
I
to
am a
come.
subscriber on your newsletter. It is excellent, and I really recommend
Thank
people follow you and keep up with what you're up to. Yeah.
Yay.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Great to have you on the show.
Yay, thank you.
Fascinating stuff. Well, thank you to Steve and Tiffany for that. Really nice to hear different perspectives on old thrills. So yeah, we've got some more of those in the bag, so we'll be feeding them out over the coming months. As always, Earthlets, please make sure that you subscribe to the 2000 AD Thrillcast, whether it is on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube or on Spotify, and help spread the word. When you see us pop up on social media, let people know about all the goodies in our archive. Hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of entertainment and insight into Galaxy's greatest comic. So from me, from the Galaxy's greatest comic and from the Galaxy's greatest podcast, until next time, Earthlets, Splendid Verthrig.